Hello guys.
I think our internet is very bad. Our connection says our connection is currently red. So can you allow us to have a few minutes to change your room?
Okay. Hello, are you all present so that we can start the tournament?
I think there's some background noises going on here. I'm not sure it's who is it from.
Okay.
But
Okay, can we go ahead and check in? Do we have both competitors from Park Lane Harbor, Ann and Zhang?
Yes, we're both here.
And do we have both competitors from bases Shenzhen, Yang, and Yi?
yes, my partner is here. We're sharing one camera.
Yes.
That's fine. Judge Samo?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, Judge Chen?
Hello.
Okay. Judge Chifodia?
Here.
Okay. Judge Takabika? Were you there? Sorry, I didn't hear anything. Nyasha, are you there?
Yes, available.
Okay. Judge Onwell?
Judge Onwell here.
Judge Tariro?
Present.
Judge Tinashe?
Yes, present.
Judge Vincent?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. Was that all 9 of you? I think so. Okay, so we'll get the round started. We are live streaming. The link has been shared to the coaches. I've shared it directly with the BIGZ Shenzhen team. If you would like to share it with your families or your friends, go ahead. I will drop the link in the chat for you to share if you would like to. So before we get started, I would just like to say congratulations to both teams on advancing to the final round of the BIGZ International Guangzhou Speech and Debate Tournament and Public Forum Debate. This is we had a partial double, so this is for round 9, math. So it's been a long weekend. Hopefully you are still ready and raring to go. I will be in the round as an account live streaming, but I will not be actively participating. So is there a judge who's willing to act as the chair for the rest of the round? Mela. Okay, Tinashe, can I ask for you to be the chair? Just monitor prep time and prompt when needed.
Okay.
Awesome, thank you. And then for the judges, just while the round is going on, unless you're actively speaking, please mute yourselves to minimize any background noise. I know several of you currently have your mics active. So if you could just mute, that would be great. And then I will turn the round over. Congratulations to both teams. Have a good round.
Okay. Hello guys. Can you do the coin flip? If you are ready, you can do coin flip so that we can start the debate. Hello, opponents.
I think we can do a coin flip. Can use your phone.
So you can. What side do you guys choose?
Well, we choose heads.
OK， 抛个硬币。
Okay.
Tail. It's tail.
Okay. Okay. Can you do a coin flip through using Siri?
Yes, we just did.
So we want second speaking.
Okay. Can you type the speaking order in the team in the chat box?
Can we have the side, please? Because I think it would be more beneficial if we type it for either con first speaker or pro first speaker and con first speaker and pro second speaker. So
So yeah, by the way, we pick side pro.
okay.
I'm first speaker, and Angelina and Kevin John second speaker.
So I just typed in the chat. Con first speaker is Beck Young, and then con second speaker is Tom C.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much. Let me confirm here. Okay.
Let me confirm something. Who's speaking the first round? Is it on or pro? Who's starting?
I'm the first speaker, pro.
Okay. And which side is starting the instructor speech? The pro or the con?
Sorry,
Which side is starting the round? The pro or the con?
pro.
Okay. That's it.
So should I start now? If everyone's ready. Judges ready, opponents ready. My time will start now. No, we affirm. First, our framework is on time span. We tell you that long-term benefits are more important than short-term benefits, and we want to ensure the more human lives saved in the future and now. So, first definition is mitigation. Mitigation refers to efforts to reduce or prevent emissions of greenhouse gases. Mitigation can mean using new technologies and renewable energies at the same time. Contention one, ineffective. Subpoint A, feasibility. Implementing adaptation measures is like a boxer dodging after being punched. The pace of adaptation financing is rising, but it continues to be outpaced by rapidly increasing costs. Annual costs in developing countries are estimated at USD 70 billion, and this figure is expected to reach 140 to 300 billion in 2030 and 280 to 500 billion in 2050. The international community has no way of providing so much financial help to developing countries who are the most affected. Also, adaptations rarely work. Of over 1,700 adaptation initiatives, only 3% had already reported real reductions to climate risks. So subpoint B, economics. Adaptation costs too much. The Copenhagen Consensus at the United Nations has estimated the cost of adaptation to be around 140 billion to 170 billion. However, after thoroughly assessing the cost of adaptation, European ministers and climate experts have reported that the true cost is about $500 billion each year. Adaptation projects worth $500 billion are not a feasible option for developing countries, nor a cheap option for developed ones. This fiscal reality leaves many countries unprotected to the negative impacts of climate change, including droughts, famines, and ecosystem loss. Lastly, maladaptation is where human response actively undermines the capacity of society to cope with climate change. And in cases of coastal zones, adaptive practices like inappropriate coastal defense schemes and coastal habitat conversions are maladaptive. In cases of agriculture, drought-resistant crops prove to have a negative impact as well, because these genes can be passed on to weedy populations, creating a new species of weed that can reduce crop quality, interfere with harvest, serve as hosts for disease, and produce toxins. And also, we tell you that without mitigation, the cost of adaptation will spike dramatically. Focusing on adaptation at the present time and neglecting mitigation makes matters worse because after a few years, the cost of adaptation will increase and the ability to mitigate will decrease. The difference is not small, as adaptation projects will cost 2 to 4 times after 10 years. And right now, it already costs $7 billion annually, and the international community will not be able to provide this amount continuously. Contention number 2, climate justice, inequality for third world countries. Many of these adaptation mechanisms needed for third world countries require implementing tools that can override natural disturbances caused by global warming. If the world is focused on adaptation, third world countries will suffer the catastrophes caused by climate change, while rich countries will muddle through with dikes, crops redesigned to survive drought, more air conditioning, and etc. Mitigation not only permanently removes greenhouse emissions from the atmosphere, it provides a worldwide solution that does not exclude any country. Not a single human would be in more danger and more harmed than another. And we also tell you that 69% of mitigation projects are effective. So even if you judge, don't buy our point about why adaptation is passive and useless. We have told you that comparatively, mitigation is still better because it costs less and it provides equality. So why does mitigation solve this problem at hand? Air pollution causes between 28,000 and 36,000 premature deaths per year in the UK. Many of which could be prevented by phasing out fossil fuels. And without mitigation measures, global warming would be about 4.1 to 4.8 degrees. But with mitigation measures, this can be decreased to around 70%. Several studies since 1991 to 2018 have concluded that it is cheaper to develop new technologies to mitigate than it will be to adapt. The study concluded that mitigating global warming early would cost about $20 trillion less than adapting to its effects later. 71% of countries, 90% of the world's population, could be better off economically by mitigating climate change. And these countries are generally the poorer ones with lower welfare. So on average, net mitigation costs increase by approximately 40% for each decade of delay. And this shows that mitigation is an immediate problem that must be placed as first priority. Even though mitigation does not mean that we will absolutely stop climate change, we tell that it is still more important because we will limit climate change. We will slow down the rate of climate change. And that is the most crucial issue at hand. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Time for the next speaker. 4 minutes.
Yeah, so because we have only one camera, I'll be facing my partner for the first 10 seconds of his speech. For the rest of the time, because I need to prepare for my own speech, I'll just be facing the computer towards me and I'll be typing.
Okay, so whenever ready, then my time will begin now. Definition: unit of adaptation as adjustment, ecological, social, or economic system in response to actual expected climate stimuli and their effect or climate impacts. Cambridge define prioritize which of the group of the things that are most important so we can deal with first. Opposition 1, pollinator decline. Woods 21 reviews that bigger across US lost 45.5% of their managed honeybees colonies from 2020 to 2021. National Park Service report that some species, such as the East butterfly population, declined by 80% each single year of 2020s. The European Environment Agency 13 found that compared to 1990s, the European population of semi-indicator species had declined by almost 50%. 50%. The FAO found that the insect will likely make up the bulk of future biodiversity, lose of 40% of invertebrate pollinator species, pollinating bees and butterflies, and facing extinction. However, data such as decline for is complete comprehension. European Parliament 21 suggests that there's no scientific data given in the full picture, but there's evidence of considerable decline in pollinator. In fact, the first priority for the EU pollinator initiative is to improve knowledge of pollinator decline. As Jacob 21 reported, it's likely an underestimate of the true scope of population decline simply because we don't have historical record of all the species. Second, why is pollinator threatened by climate change? Mary A.C. Amos said climate change is making flower bloom a half day earlier each year, which means that plants are now blooming a month earlier than 45 years ago. Plants blooming earlier only means that they do not get pollinated, and pollinators are left without food. Observatory. Adaptation solves the by definition, helping pollinators to survive is the adaptation strategy. Innovation 21 states that pollinators play a significant part in enhancing city sustainability and mitigating the impact of climate change. USDA adaptation projects work on reducing the use of pesticides and practices that reduce habitat destruction of pollinators while increasing plant diversity that help pollinator diets. The 2018 EU Pollinator Initiative have Project Protein, but not limited to create a platform for pollinator data collection, monitoring, innovating pesticide and mapping framework of pollinators, and raising money for researching project as well as social awareness. The first impact is mass extinction. Jacob 21 states that estimate of 87% of the flower plants are reliant on pollinator, while around 75% of these crops are that rely on pollination. This is crucial because Christmas 19 states that as 87% of the flower plants are dependent on pollinator. They are basically for all ecosystem services to some extent. Therefore, pollinator loss might cause degradation of ecosystem services, inducting counterproductive human response and interlinked poverty spirals. Older 21 found that pollinator ensured a continuation of plants population that locked up carbon. Second impact is hunger. UN found that 100 crop species that provide 90% of the world food. Over 70 of them are pollinated by bees. This UN calls animal pollinators as invisible multi-trillion-dollar services provided by nature. Natural. Rapid 15 warned that diet change due to pollinator extinction is going to lead 1.4 million deaths to malnutrition each year. 71 million people in low-income countries become deficient of vitamin A that sustains one immune system and vision. Additional 2.2 billion further deprived. 173 million people become deficient of folates that prevent birth deficits. Additional 1.2 billion further deprived of it. Third is agriculture decommercializations. FAO found that the total loss surplus following a loss of honeybee population estimated around $1.1 billion of loss in economic surplus of US $1.1 billion would cause a further $1.5 billion income loss for agricultural supply and processing industries. World Bank 22 explained that agriculture accounts for 4% of global GDP, and in some least developing countries, 25% of with the cost of commercial agriculture. We expect $3.844 trillion lose from extinction pollinator. Work 21 explained that combining net energy investment $1.43 trillion per year with $0.07 trillion per year for the forest restoration, we land on the back of envelope budgets of just a little $1.5 trillion per year to achieve the 1.5 degrees Celsius goal. We see that the cost of pollination extinction outweighs the cost required for climate mitigation, meaning that it would simply be impossible to spend money enough on climate mitigation when we have already at a close of $4 trillion lose, unless we spend money to both recover the $3.8 trillion lose and the $1.5 trillion on mitigation, which is too ideal to be considered. This means that without first preventing extinction of pollinator, we're economically unable to mitigate to begin. So this is a compound. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. If you need prep time,
So crossfire.
okay, 3 minutes. Crossfire.
Actually, before the cross, I would like to check two evidence from the other side. So the first one is that in the 7,000 adaptation projects, only 3% of them work. And the second one is that 69% of mitigation projects are effective.
Okay, please run your prep time, thanks.
It's not our prep time. I think there's 1 minute of prep time for you. 1 minute extra for you to find your evidence. And then if you
No,
didn't,
after we've sent the evidence to you and you look through it, it's your prep time.
yeah, but currently you're running the 1 minute prep
No,
minute time to find the
there's
evidence.
there's a minute for evidence check,
Yes.
an extra minute for evidence check. So
Yeah.
it does not run into your prep time. It's an evidence check.
Opponents, I think for the first card that you sent to us, I tried Command F, but I couldn't find any part of the article talking about percentage of success rate. So you might have sent the wrong link. Can you check it yourself?
Okay, we'll check it.
Okay, so actually you don't Command F percentage, you actually type %, and you will see where the evidence is.
I did Command
Please
F.
scroll down the page and you will see where it is. It is about 2/3 down the page.
Okay,
And
let me.
you need to like Command F per and then space sent, because for some reason it is edited like that on that website.
Okay. Oh, I see it now. Please give us some time for the battery. Yes, we found it. But can you also send the 69% efficiency one as well? We asked for 2 cards. This is only part of it. Can you send the other one too? I think for
We cannot seem to find it now. If we find it, we'll send it to you later.
sure. So we can start our costs.
Okay, I believe your question first.
Yeah, okay. Let me just find it. Okay, so yeah. So how does pollinators relate to humans adapting to climate change?
Oh, because pollinator decline. If pollinator decline, as I said in the speech, 87% of the flower plants are reliant on pollinators. So
How are humans, like my question is, how are humans going to adapt using pollinators?
Okay. So first is, let me read it. First, pollinator decline itself is a climate impact. Remember our Mary 18 card in constructive speech. Climate change is making flower bloom half a day earlier each year, which means that the plants are now blooming a month earlier than 45 years. And the second, pollinator help reduce environmental damage. Thus, pollinator are also adaptations tools for humanity. Remember our Innovation 21 cards. It says that pollinator plays a significant part in enhancing city sustainability and mitigating the impact of climate change. And third, pollinator aid is defined by government agency as adaptation. Remember our USDA card in constructive, our on a pollinator saving project. This
Can I just have a follow-up to clarify the question? So how will we as humans be able to save pollinators?
I haven't finished my answer yet.
Okay, continue, please.
Okay, so also we said that we like the 2 project, like I'm just continuing the USDA card and constructive on pollinator saving project. This article explicitly states pollinator habit enhancement can help farmer adapt to climate change. Okay, I think it's my question time now. So in your speech, you have said that our cost was 500 billion to 60 years later, right? But we have evidence showing that if you use prioritize mitigation and to reduce the greenhouse gas emission, which is your framework, it will cost $791 trillion to 2100. Isn't that our impact is bigger than your impact by spending money?
Do you realize that mitigation has impacts infinitely? Because if you reduce climate change and the rate
I'm just asking, is 791 trillion larger than 500 billion?
we're telling you that it's not, because we have infinite impacts. We are telling you that we're saving.
Isn't 70?
And also, do you think human lives are underweighed by economics? Do you think like money is more important
No,
than
I'm just asking you because in your concept you said adaptation is too costly, but in our evidence we said that it's going to cost 791 trillion in 70 years just for mitigation, prioritize
Do
mitigation.
you realize that mitigation has infinite impacts on human lives? Are you saying pollinators are more important than humans?
I'm just asking your economic point because you said that reducing GHG is your framework, right? And I'm asking you the cost.
So we are telling you
Just
that
answer me. Is it bigger? Just answer me. Is mitigation more costly adaptation?
the evidence that you have provided shows that the cost is bigger. However, we are telling you that even if the cost is bigger, we should still
is it bigger? Just answer me. Is the cost bigger
I've
or
already
not?
said yes, and your evidence that
Okay, move on your question. Okay, move on to your question.
Okay, so you guys, your sole contention was basically based on pollinators. So don't you realize that by mitigating climate change, we're reducing global temperature, and that is going to directly reduce human lives. Human lives are more important than pollinators, right?
Yes. Yeah, because we are adapting 87%. We're saving the 87% of the plant flower. If we don't prioritize adaptation, 87 of them will like decline. So like in the now world, like there's trees, right? The trees are gonna decline. There's nothing you can breathe. And also, as I said in my constructive speech, I've said that there's 70% of the crop are being pollinated by bees. So if we don't prioritize adaptation, there's not gonna be.
Time's up. Time's up. I think the time is up. We can go ahead into the rebuttal speeches.
Okay, so if judges ready, opponents ready, my time starts. Now, first, I want to mention that our opponent's entire case is based on the assumption that pollinators are the most important issue in today's debate. However, clearly that is not the case because there are more important issues at hand. But even if we accept that pollinators do play an important role, here are the ways in which our opponent's case does not stand. So first, their entire case is based on the impact of decreased pollinators. However, and then they use a slippery slope argument in order to show how that impact would therefore impact farmers, will therefore impact the industries, will therefore impact the world economy, and therefore impact human lives. This is clearly a slippery slope argument, as pollinators only play a small role in the entirety of agriculture. And even if they have shown how important the agriculture industry is, this does not directly cause with the importance of pollinators. And even if they prove that the pollinator do play a crucial role, it does not show why mitigating climate change wouldn't have the same effect on saving pollinator as adapting to climate change. We believe that by adapting to climate change and helping those pollinators, you're basically experiencing the impact of climate change and then trying to make this impact smaller. But by mitigation, we can avoid this decrease in pollinator altogether. We wouldn't even have those negative natural disasters that might cause a decrease in pollinator in the first place. We don't even have the things that we have to adapt to, and therefore mitigation is a better method to solve the pollinator problem. Now, they also mentioned the $700 trillion as their backing up for their economic point. However, this is not true, as $700 trillion is 7 times more than the world's total GDP. Now, why is this the case? Because their whole argument of $700 trillion is based on a hypothetical projection of 100 years. It shouldn't be compared to our immediate cost as shown in my partner's case, a hypothetical projection in 100 years. And this projection might not even be accurate because mitigation costs will only decrease as time went on. Now, let us consider their case holistically again. Pollinators, they're basically saying that climate change are currently impacting the efficiency of pollination. However, this efficiency of pollination only plays a small role as it only affects agriculture. And the agriculture, as they said, only takes up a rather small percentage of GDP compared to, for example, the energy sector as we are discussing on our team. Therefore, our impact outweighs theirs, as their impact of agriculture is less than our impact on the energy industry and on other industries. Now, they also showed us how not adapting to pollination will lead to mass extinction of animals and human beings, but we believe this can actually better be solved using mitigation than with adaptation. Even if we give them that pollination does play an important role, we still win this debate because mitigation can solve this problem in all aspects. It not only deals with pollinator, but also deals with flooding. It deals with natural disaster that might destroy farmlands. Mitigation deals with this problem in all aspects and on all degrees, where your proposed solution of adaptation only deals with pollination. Therefore, as we can see, adaptation not only costs more, but it also deals with the problem in an extremely limited scope by only concerning pollinators while ignoring all the other economic, social, political aspects of this problem. And their evidence used for their economics does not stand as compared to us. And also, even if in the short run mitigation costs more, if we do not mitigate now, this cost is only going to double and quadruple in 10 years. And we are not willing to take this cost. That is why mitigation is a way more urgent problem, and we should win on all our contentions plus the pollinator contention that they have arise, since we treat this problem in a more mature and holistic view. Thank you.
Judge, can I have 1 minute for a point?
All right.
Okay.
Did someone ask for pepper? Oh, the second speaker can speak.
Just ask for 1 minute. Thanks.
Oh. I think you can now start.
Can I have 20 seconds more? I'm just looking at the
Okay.
Yeah, I think I'm ready.
Okay, you can.
Let me put my timer. So if everyone's ready, then my time starts now. First, let's go to their definition. Their definition of mitigation is that reducing greenhouse gases, and they tell you specifically that they can use both renewable energy and fossil fuel at the same time. This definition for mitigation of having renewable energy and fossil fuel in the same in the first place is extremely problematic because the net zero emission by 2050 scenario defined by IEA's scenario is that it's shows a pathway for global energy sector to achieve net zero CO2 emission by 2050, with advancing economics reaching net zero emission in advance of others. This means that their unwarranted definition of mitigation revolved around toleration of both renewable energy and fossil fuel coexistence cannot happen. They accuse us of conducting a slippery slope by giving you such a link chain from pollination extinction to no pollinator of 87% of plants and 70% of the world's food, and the rest of the agriculture becomes no longer profitable, and therefore a collapse of commercial agriculture and a return to primitives of society. However, every single article we cite from, including 87% of the flowering plants, including the 70% of the world's food, took the premise that pollinators are going to extinct. And as we have already proven to you, in a single year of 2021, pollinators have declined by 40%. We're in an urgent situation where all of these threats are real, and what they're saying is not false, is false and not warranted. Now, going to their condition one of cost, too much cost. In their first condition, they tell you that the cost of adaptation is much more and mitigation costs less. They again tell you that in the rebuttal, the adaptation will cost more than mitigation, but it is simply not the reality in both terms of money and in terms of the damages to the environment. They iterated how much money it will cost for adaptation, but they entirely ignored how much money it will cost for mitigation. In fact, look, Logix 21, the current climate efforts are already focusing on mitigation. The UN estimated that only 5% of funds towards adaptation. In order to fully meet IPCC target, they need to up to 700
$91 trillion would needed to be spent by 2100. There's a real risk that is trying to achieve net zero by 2050 that is causing a worldwide depression. Even if they tell you that there's a sum of money over 80 years, it would simply divide it by after dividing by 100. After dividing by 791, it would mean that there will be $10 trillion each year spent on mitigation. That is far more than what they're warranting for. And next, the paper demonstrates that the current emission reduction on the efforts will lead to a non-beneficial washing range from US dollars 126.68 trillion dollars to USD 616.12 trillion dollars by 2100, compared to the scenario of adaptation. Based on the future precedents, if we were going to mitigate in climate damage in the future, it would only cause more damages in economic effects. And further, their impacts are simply false because, first, transition to renewable energy is impossible. Smith 14 reported that the major global energy transition from fossil fuel to coal to oil have each taken 50 to 60 years. The current move to natural gas will also take a long time. It will take too long for us to fully transition to renewable energy. And further, UN mitigation agreement for the Pearl urges is extremely problematic in itself. The document acknowledges the fact that most developing countries are economically incapable of financing renewable energy. So they made the plan to finance $100 billion worth of climate funds to developing countries each year. However, this fund is, although it sounds a lot, it's far from enough. In fact, according to Nature 21, found that not only this fund is out of reach due to the lack of support from developed country, it is quote unquote minuscule from the investment to mitigation. And another impact to the cost is not just the economic cost, but also the environment cost, because it is insecure for humanity to have vast environmental destruction. Because Stanford University 18 reported that supply chain for critical and raw materials are vulnerable to political and economic disruption that could hamper the global shift to a renewable energy future. Further, Saunders studies published in Nature 20 argued that mining potentially influenced 50 million kilometers square of Earth's land surface, with 8% coinciding with protected area, 7% key biodiversity area, and 16%.
Okay, time up.
For those reasons, about it strongly urge for a
Time up. Okay, next part of the debate, we can continue.
Okay, so if the opponent's ready and the judges are ready, my time, like the final focus would start.
What? Final focus? Crossfire.
Oh, I'm sorry, the crossfire. The crossfire would start.
Yes.
Now, so my first question is, the opponent said that the transition to clean energy is impossible. However, we have just seen that China have transitioned to clean energy and right now uses more than 40% of their total energy is from clean energy. How can our opponents still maintain that it is impossible to do that, although we have clearly seen historical examples?
I have two responses to that. First, it is only 40%. It does not represent 100%. IEA trajectory requires 100% of renewable energy because it requires net zero emission for the energy sector. And the second response is China is one of the richest developing countries, if not a developed country. This does not represent the world, and there are many developing countries who relied largely on the international funds. And without the support from international funds, it is impossible for them to mitigate.
Okay, let me make a short response, because our full case, our impact is not based on the assumption of net zero. We're not assuming that we will achieve net zero, but our whole impact is just based on mitigation, not mitigating.
If your impacts about mitigate, if you have any impacts about mitigation, you need to take the mitigation efforts that are defined by IEA as net zero.
No, we do not believe that the net zero is the only way to mitigate. We believe there's a lot of alternative ways that will achieve benefits as well without.
That is the only warrant you're talking about in the constructive speech. The only warrant you're talking about is the Paris Agreement in 2015.
For example, in the status quo, we have a mix of fossil fuel and renewable energy, and we believe
Does that work? There's only 0.1 degrees Celsius decrease from the past 2 decades in most.
Yes,
in most
but
that's only showing that the current mitigation policies is not simply not working. And in the future, with the current trajectory, it would reach 2.7 up to 4.8 degrees Celsius, and that is only going to lead to all the impacts that you're trying to say. And hold on. So in the pros world, doesn't that mean that all the impacts that you were trying to say, including the number of deaths from heat waves, the number of deaths from the premature death caused by the increasing level of how do you say industrial?
Okay, so this is incorrect for 2 reasons. The first reason is that the current policies are working and we are seeing a decrease, even if we just follow the
decrease of 0.1 degrees.
A decrease of 0.1 degrees. This is because countries are not corroborating enough, and also you don't know how much it actually decreased because you don't have two data to compare it with. You don't have a world without and with mitigation because mitigation is always happening. So this data cannot be founded. It's only a hypothesis. Furthermore, we need future cooperation. So that is exactly why we should prioritize mitigation, because
Well,
mitigation.
didn't you just said earlier in this crossfire that the current adaptation, the current mitigation policy works as an alternative to the IEA policy? Doesn't that mean that all your warrants is based on
I'm saying that the current is possible, and we don't have to be the IEA
yes,
standard.
the current is possible, but it is far from effective. It is far from effective. It only triggers
middle point
0.1
between net zero and polluting.
The trajectory is far from enough. The status quo is going to reach 4.8 degrees Celsius.
Yes, but I still maintain that we can find a middle point between polluting without any constraints and net zero. There's definitely a middle point.
The only way to mitigate is to reach net zero. Thank you.
All right, time's up.
Can I please call for 1 minute of prep time?
I think the time is up.
Okay. Let me just get my timer. Okay. If judges ready, opponents ready, my time will start now. In this round of debate, our opponent's case is good, but it's too good to be true. Your sole contention is based on pollinators, and we tell you that this contention is not concrete. So as long as we can prove that this contention is not important or this contention does not have significant impacts, we should be winning this round of debate. First of all, they do not even have a unique impact. In fact, their whole impact can be folded into our case of mitigation, as we are benefiting the environment. What does this mean? We are benefiting the environment because we are decreasing CO2 emissions. We are using renewable energies, and these energies are sustainable and are not damaging the environment. And this is benefiting the whole globe. This is benefiting the grasslands. This is benefiting the oceans. This is benefiting every single place on the earth that could be used for plantation of crops. This is a simple fact that cannot be argued. However, if we are saving the environment, then that means we are saving habitats through mitigation. We are saving these animals. We are saving pollinators. We are saving crops. So their whole impact of pollinating crops and thus ensuring food security can be folded into our case because we are also doing that. We are simply telling you that they are losing because we should not be prioritizing pollinators and these crops over mitigation. So there are also many fallacies in their case, right? First of all, they only have evidence showing how beneficial pollinators are in pollinating plants and ensuring food security. However, they do not have any examples to illustrate that these pollinators are actually helping climate change, which is the main argument in this round debate. That is the reason they do not have examples is because pollinators are not being regarded in a high position in the status quo. However, we tell you that in the status quo, there are still enough food supply, and that is because we are utilizing mitigation. Secondly, human lives are a very important issue. All they have on the human lives point is that pollinators pollinate 70% of the crops, and so without pollinators, there would be a lack of food, and thus food insecurity means people will die. However, if we utilize mitigation, there wouldn't even be a problem of food insecurity, and we wouldn't even have to prioritize these pollinators in the status quo because mitigation directly means that we are trying to maintain the environment right now, and that basically means that these crops wouldn't be destroyed. Furthermore, even if they say that mitigation doesn't work, which we can prove to be false, as we already said, that even if we cannot ensure net zero, there will be still a significant decrease in the rate of global warming, which is beneficial overall. Even if we can prove this to be false, which is impossible, we tell you that it is still, we still win this round debate because we could ensure crops in so many different ways using renewable energy, right? We could plant crops in these in these rooms that ensure a good environment for them to grow. And there are many technologies, new technologies, which is our framework being developed right now. They also rebutted our framework about using fossil fuels and renewable energy. However, we tell you that that isn't even in our framework. Our framework is using new technologies and renewable energy. Lastly, they do not provide sufficient rebuttals to our points about equality for third world countries, which is a very important point on climate justice. They also do not provide sufficient points to prove why adaptation doesn't cost so much, because we think that protecting pollinators will actually cost a lot. And they also do not prove why adaptation is feasible for the developing countries who don't have money to provide these pollinators, who are not even the most important. That is why we want a program.
Okay.
Can we have 40 minutes of, 40 seconds of break? Thanks.
Okay, 47. Break time. Okay.
Yeah, we're ready.
Oh yeah, just set my timer. So if everyone's ready, then my time start. Now, Judge, the first I'm gonna block about my opponent saying that mitigation also works. They tell you that mitigation can solve pollinator danger, but mitigation cannot save pollinator the way adaptation does. First, to define a general climate agenda, IEA states that bring global energy to related CO2 emission to net zero by 2050 and limiting global temperature rise to 1.5 degrees Celsius. This objective is problematic in three ways to save the pollinator population. First, it's ineffective. Most 22 found that a moderate increase in temperature of 1.5 degrees Celsius leads to a decrease by 72.5% in nectar volume, while almost 40% reduction in floral units, representing a significant decrease of available food for flower visitors. The worst part is referring back to observation 2. Climate change makes flower bloom earlier than they were having in pollinator DNAs, but there are no evidence suggesting that reverse in temperature would make pollinators better off. Second, slower program. Giro 20 discovered that global warming is already disturbing the interaction between plants and pollinators. Since all this modification altered the attractiveness of flowers to pollinator, impact of the foraging behavior. The goal of having the temperature agenda met almost 3 decades after. Now is not going to save pollinators. Third, it's not targeted. UNEP defined climate change mitigation as effort to reduce or prevent emission of greenhouse gases. What does it do with our so-called conventional pollinators? Even if there are small possibility for mitigation to help release the climate factor that cause pollinator extinction, unlike adaptation strategies, the majorities of the other factors that cause pollinator extinction are not targeted. Thus, pollinator would still very likely become extinct. Judge, when we have won this debate first, we actually do have impact outweigh our opponents. Why? Because in the first crossfire, my opponents admit on our point saying that mitigation is more costly than adaptations in both short-term and long-term. Judge, they can say that the 73 years cost 791 trillion can be short-term or long-term, but they give out that adaptation only costs 1.8 trillion maybe only in 60 years. So we definitely have a larger impact on economic. Judge, we're not just comparing economic, but we are saving lives also. So on the renewable energy point, it's not possible. Like, we're reaching net zero emission will require a massive amount of algae carbon-free emission. According to Forbes 19, this can only be fueled by nuclear energy. The UN agrees. For example, China will build 150 nuclear plants in the next 15 years to meet the carbon neutral target by 2060. Nuclear power generates tons of nuclear waste, as staying radioactive for 2,400 years. Like, just like the Fukushima disaster radiated hundreds of miles to Japan and dumped a large amount of radioactive waste into the ocean, which means that mitigation spent 791 trillion to make the environment more worse. Just like the example I give of the Fukushima radioactive waste. Like, we give out a bunch of evidence, but they ignore it. So that means that in their side, so our point of saving pollinator decline, which means that, so if we choose to prioritize mitigation, we're not able to solve the 87% pollinator decline. So, Judge, my opponent's putting the entire world, humans' life on the debate. Because if we don't have the 87, we're not going to have food or oxygen to breathe, because the 87% pollinator decline. Judge, we definitely win this entire comp battle. We have the largest impact and saving the most people using the less money.
All right. If there is no need for prep talk, we can get into the grand crossfire.
Okay, so we'll ask the first question. We recognize that flowers are blooming early in your world, but don't you realize that that is caused by global warming? So mitigation can slow global warming. So doesn't that mean we can also prevent flowers from blooming early?
No, we cannot because it is irreversible. The change because of global warming that happened on the flower unit.
Oh, the mitigation is trying to slow global warming. So if we can slow global warming, doesn't that
No,
mean
but
we
the change cannot be reversed. As we have already told you, it
So
cannot
are
be
you saying
reversed.
that flowers are already blooming early right now?
Yes.
Yes.
And you're saying pollinators can reverse
as I said, I'm a concerned
But if they're already blooming early, how can pollinators reverse that?
Exactly.
Well, as pollinators can't reverse themselves, but what we're telling you is that
Also
we're
in our world we
increasing
can't reverse, so it's the same.
Is your case based on the assumption that based on global warming, all pollinators, 350,000 species of them will all go extinct?
Yes.
Yes.
Here's our point, okay? So
But
what we're
you're
saying
saying
is
a
that
new species of pollinator discovered last month. You're saying that they're all going to go extinct, even those discovered last month.
yes, because
Okay, this is a big
17 pollinator indicated species have declined by over 50%, and
over
the overall
50% is just
pollinator have
overall.
declined
It
by
does not
40%
account
in
for
a single year. Now, let's tell you why adaptation projects will save them from the danger of flower units blooming earlier. So the reason after and behind that is that as we have already stated in our EU Environmental Commission 2018 initiative, it is saying that we are going to increase the food supply for the pollinators artificially. So that means that even if the wildflowers
increased food supply does not change the fact that the flowers are blooming early and the pollinator need to get to the flower in order to produce their effects.
Yes.
Even if we feed those
And also
pollinators,
we're
it's
telling
not
you-
going to solve
we're-
the food problem.
We're telling you that in both roads the flower is blooming early, so there isn't a difference. And we're telling you that mitigation means
Yes,
slowing
exactly.
down.
That's why we're
Opponents,
telling
you
you.
don't understand our argument.
What we're
okay?
telling you is that adaptation solves this disjointing problem between time, because we can help the pollinators fix their time frame towards flowers. So in the
But
mitigation
don't you
world,
also realize that mitigation means that we're slowing down the rate of climate change, and so we're preventing
What
these.
does it do with
flowers blooming
pollinator
early in the
decline?
future.
as we have already tell you, slowing down doesn't change anything, because these flowers have been permanently changing in their DNA because of such increasing temperature for the past.
Okay, so you believe that
in your
there's
framework,
a few decades of time
you said mitigation is the way that reduce greenhouse gas emission. Then what does it do with our point of pollinator decline? It doesn't have anything to do with
It does, because by reducing climate change, we are protecting the habitat of which these pollinators live in. And if
How
the
are you
habitat is the same, then they're not going to
How are
decline.
you protecting the habitat if your only goal is to reduce CO2 emissions?
Because reducing CO2 emissions reduces the temperature rise, and thus we're protecting the habitat.
Okay, does it
This isn't
reduce
even a debatable point, it's a
Does it
fact.
reduce pesticide use? Does it reduce intensified farming mechanism? Does it reduces the colony?
Okay, but those intensified problems are not adaptation to climate change. They're adaptation to industry.
It is.
As we have already tell you in rebuttal
Adaptation
and
to
in
industries.
okay.
Judge, you don't understand. No, opponents.
As we
you
have
don't
already
understand
tell
the
you
point.
during the rebuttal and the
Time's up. Time's up. Sorry, time's up. So we are going into the last bit, which is the final focus.
We would like to use our remaining prep time. Thank you.
All right, it's a minute and a minute, almost 2 minutes. Yeah. I think you can start now.
Okay, so let me set up my timer. Okay, judges ready, opponents ready, my time starts. Now, so first I'm going to weigh today's debate. The first weighing point is on human lives. We have argued that compared to adaptation, mitigation saves human lives by cutting emission, and cutting emission in 10 US states could save 3.7 million lives worldwide. This is a direct impact of human lives instead of their indirect impact by saving pollinators. So basically, they're suggesting that we should save pollinators by sacrificing human life, which we believe, even if we follow their argument, is not a sound argument. Furthermore, mitigation does not only save life in the short term, but also ensure the safety of future generation as well as future ecosystems. If we are not going to mitigate, then this problem is just going to be worse, and more ecosystems will be destroyed. And furthermore, let us wait on economic causes of adaptation. Adaptation projects will increase to 2 to 4%. 2 to 400% in 10 years, which means that their pollination project will just get more and more expensive as the climate worsens. Furthermore, they do not rebut our point on injustice, which means that we win our point that adaptation is not feasible for developing countries, which are the most vulnerable stakeholders and other people we should protect. Therefore, they're claiming that we should have these pollination projects in developed countries while ignoring that they're not feasible for developing countries, which actually accounts for most of the population of the world. However, even if the pollinators are impactful, we still win because all of their impacts are the same on our side, because mitigation solves this problem not only by solving the pollination food problem, but also by protecting their ecosystem and by protecting the sea level rise, which directly links with the size of their food chain. Even though they suggested that food security can save human life in the future, in our world, we can save that too. We can have the food security impact as well by saving those pollinators, despite the fact that their argument is built on chain after chain. And I believe it's highly unlikely, as they claim, that all the over 100,000 species of pollinator will all just die out. This is highly unlikely, and therefore their case does not stand compared to our impact on economics as well as on human life. Hence, I strongly urge an affirmative ballot. Thank you.
All right. Let's speak up from the conside. You can go ahead.
Can we use the rest of our prep? Thanks.
I think you can start now.
Okay, so let me turn myself. Everyone's ready, then my time starts now. During final focus, they tell you that we're trying to have a slippery slope argument by having a chain of link. However, this is how a PF should work. But even if they tell you that we're link, we tell you that every single evidence we're citing from has the premise of pollinator extinction. Now, during the summary sheets, they tell you that during mitigation is a medicine for everything, saving grass, plants, and crops, and sea, and animals, and people, and everything, and the entire world. Do not let them have access to this argument, because first, this argument is made up in the summary, so we do not have a chance to make a response. Second, this argument is not supported by any cited evidence, so you should suspect that they are trying to lie to you by making up effectiveness of mitigation to save anything. And third, this argument fundamentally does not work because
because never once in the entire debate they have responded on how mitigation can even be possible in the first place. If they tell you is that China has 40% of energy output on renewable energy. However, the reality is that most developing countries that the developed countries will never willing to aid these developing countries and will never be able to even get access to energy resources because we have to reach net zero in energy-related emission. Judge, today's debate is a clear calm ballot for one single reason. The world for the pro is simply impossible. The pro's world has two choices. The first choice is that they can choose to have a combined energy output in both renewable energy and fossil fuel, which would result in temperature rise of more than 2.7 degrees in the near future. This result of the choice is that the climate impacts, including not only to increasing adaptation costs and death of heat waves, injustice, and air pollution, they are going to face reduction. They're going to face a reduction of more than 70% of the world's food supply, and leading to a best case scenario of 1.4 million people dying each year, more than 2.2 billion people deprived of key vitamin, and decline of extinct of more than 87% of all flowering plants, and thus a collapse of the ecosystem. And in the worst case scenario, the entire human society is going to fall under a self-sustenance farming, and that is going to lead to a collapse of the entire global environment. Now that their second choice, they can follow the IEA trajectory of having a full renewable energy transfer, but this leads to almost all the impacts mentioned earlier, in addition to national conflicts on mitigation resources, destruction of the 16% wildness of mining, and recycling costs that are going to further toxinate the environment. For this reason above, we strongly urge for combat. Thank you.